So today we're going to talk about single sign-on, multi-factor authentication for Oracle Business Suite and how to implement this without a huge amount of cost and complexity. A lot of our clients have struggled with trying to get single sign-on and multi-factor authentication working with Oracle Business Suite. And we're going to present today a solution that's very different than the other solutions out there and can provide a lot of power and capability around single sign-on and multi-factor authentication. Before we get started, a quick background about Integrity. Integrity was founded in 2002 by former Big Six consultants working on large ERP projects. Back then, everyone still had the apps password as apps. We've come a long way from that, but there is still a lot to do. Integrity helps protect our clients two different ways. We have a set of products, one being App Sentry, which validates the security of Oracle Business Suite, the entire technology stack, the database, the application servers, as well as the application. What we'll talk about mostly today is our proactive layer of protection for Oracle Business Suite being AppDefend, which also has the capability to provide single sign-on and multi-factor authentication capabilities for Oracle Business Suite as well as PeopleSoft. We also do a lot of consulting with our clients doing remote security assessments, compliance assistance, those SOX challenges, GDPR, as well as doing requirements and design definition around a number of products, including Oracle Database Vault, Oracle Audit Vault, Imperva, Guardium, those types of products. How do you actually make Oracle Business Suite secure? How do you fit Oracle Business Suite into your ecosystem? So our consulting team is a true consulting organization that really blends world-class Oracle Business Suite knowledge as well as IT security knowledge. And finally, we're backed up by a world-class research team. So a lot of the security bugs found in the critical patch updates are actually found by Integrity reported to Oracle. We have a very close working relationship with Oracle, both at the security team as well as the Oracle Business Suite development team. So let's jump into the presentation. So a little background here before we get started, some definition. So when we talk about SSO, we're talking about single sign-on. How do I actually get that sign-on away from Oracle Business Suite so my users don't have to constantly be re-entering their credentials every single time they access a new application, including Oracle Business Suite? Multi-factor authentication is adding on beyond just the username password to what's called another factor that they need to have, know, or something like that. So the generic term is multi-factor authentication. Generally, when it applies to Oracle Business Suite and most major applications, we're talking about two-factor authentication. So you need a password and something else. So when someone signs in, they're going to have their username, their password, and something else. It may be a prompt on their phone, it may be a hardware token or something like that. And we talk about factors. Typically, the definition is something you know, typically a password. Something you're in possession of, something like a hardware token, a device, typically your phone today that you get a push notification on. Or there's actually a third category that's like a biometric, like a fingerprint, something that's a little bit more secure. And typically when we're talking about an Oracle Business Suite situation, we're really looking at, hey, I want to have that additional authentication. I want to force my user to know they have to have a username, they have to have a password, and they have to have something else. And that typically becomes a hardware token or a push notification on their telephone or a 6-digit token code that you have to implement on their phone. When we're talking about multi-factor authentication, one of our biggest drivers about why we're implementing this for our clients is cybersecurity insurance. I don't know if your renewal is coming up, but we've had a number of clients come to us and say, we cannot renew our cybersecurity insurance until we put on multi-factor authentication on all our critical applications. Oracle Business Suite becomes a critical application. Because again, it's your financials, it's potentially your HR data, it's maybe your manufacturing floor. So when we're talking about multi-factor authentication, this is something significant that's coming down the road that you may not have hit today, but cybersecurity insurance is mandating this as something required for significant applications within the organization. So when we talk about SSO for Oracle Business Suite, why would you want Oracle Business Suite and use SSO? First, being from an IT security background, a lot of times we can't talk about, hey, we're going to increase employee and IT productivity. From a security perspective, you really don't say those words very often, but SSO is one of those areas that we can actually improve the user experience. The users today are logging into multiple applications, and your eBusiness Suite may be on an island that you may have implemented SSO for most of your other applications, but it hasn't reached Oracle Business Suite yet. when we're talking about SSO, we can eliminate those additional multiple application logins and extend this to Oracle Business Suite, improving satisfaction. We're getting rid of that password fatigue. We can also reduce IT support calls, because how many calls today do you get for password resets, authentication issues into Oracle Business Suite? We had one client work with us. They actually estimated this number at $42,000 a year. Not quite sure how they got to that number, but that was their estimate of the, because they went through their support tickets and basically had a number of calls into the help desk to just do password resets and authentication issues. People forgot their username, they didn't know what their password was, it had to get reset, things like that. So we're talking about real dollars here. From our perspective, we're looking to improve the security and the compliance of the application. So how can we actually reduce the risk of password theft? How can we make passwords stronger? How can we include additional enforcement of those passwords? Because again, the Oracle Business Suite password policies are decent, they're no problem. But when I do this in Active Directory, Azure AD, a tool like Okta, I can actually get much better enforcement of passwords. From a compliance perspective, this is incredible that I can now terminate somebody in my Active Directory and they are terminated with access into Oracle Business Suite. This is often a pain point. When we do our security assessments, we're actually looking at the termination date for users and actually when that user was terminated. And this is actually a significant compliance issue for many organizations, that your user ID in Oracle Business Suite is not terminated immediately upon termination of employment. If you walk somebody to the door, is that person being terminated in Oracle Business Suite? And a lot of organizations say, oh yeah, no, we terminated them in Active Directory and got rid of their VPN access. Yeah, but they can still sneak in and walk into a conference room, hopefully find a computer and start logging in. An additional point here is that a lot of the identity management solutions have very powerful risk-based authentication controls. So they can have tools that look at, hey, this person logged in from this IP address consistently and all of a sudden they logged in from China. That's a problem. Oracle Business Suite cannot do that. In our AppSentry product, we have some capabilities around that, but from a proactive defensive layer of protection, that when you're logging in, can you check that an IP address was used by this user in the last 30 days? Is that risk? And then calculate some other risks. Is it 2 a.m. they're logging in from China from a Linux computer? Is that problematic? And these identity management systems can do that where you can't do that today in Oracle Business Suite. So therefore, you can actually add in a layer of risk-based authentication using the robust capabilities of the identity management solution. So again, we're improving security, compliance, as well as improving employee satisfaction and reducing costs with single sign-on. So there's a lot of benefits to single sign-on here with very few downsides. The downside today is Oracle Business Suite doesn't support SSO natively. There is no support within it. And if you want to implement SSO, Oracle solution is either buy Oracle Internet Directory, Oracle Access Manager, or implement Oracle the Cloud IDCS. The problem with these solutions is now you're implementing another identity management solution within your environment. That will then hook up to your Active Directory because there's no native connection supported, sold by Oracle that directly connects Oracle Business Suite to Active Directory. Additionally, there's third-party solutions that can do this, that again, you need a standalone identity management solution that will then connect to your whatever you're using internally. What we're going to present today is a native solution for Oracle Business Suite that is directly from Oracle Business Suite to your identity management solution with no middleman, no additional hardware involved. Native to Oracle Business Suite. It's very powerful and very capable. When we talk about multi-factor authentication, again, we're trying to prevent the fraud. We're trying to prevent the phishing attacks. We'll show you an example here in a little bit that we had a client who implemented our multi-factor authentication because they were getting phishing attacks against their employee self-service. So people were phishing their employees, and it was a large university, and going after their direct deposits. So that they would phish the employee, get their Oracle Business Suite login for employee self-service, go in, change the direct deposit bank account, and actually then steal their paycheck for that period. And they were getting about $500,000 a year in fraud. So this can become real money, especially depending on what modules you have. We've seen this case also with suppliers going in and stealing the supplier credentials and then changing the bank account number and stealing the vendor payments. So the goal here is improve security, add additional authentication, something that if you compromise a password, that account is not compromised. Improve compliance. If you have credit cards in your environment, PCI DSS requires multi-factor authentication. Potentially HIPAA, GDPR also require the strong authentication. And the key is trying to get this to be contextual. Can I get down to forcing of two-factor authentication in something like the employee self-service direct deposit changes? Can I get down to that level? And that becomes very important in terms of a solution. And when you're looking at MFA solutions for Oracle Business Suite, think about that. What do I want to do? How can I do it? So again, two-factor authentication is not natively supported by Oracle Business Suite. There is no direct connection. You can't just turn on two-factor authentication with the application. Oracle's solution is, again, go buy another identity management solution, and I'm now forcing you to also implement SSO as just to get two-factor authentication. So if you want two-factor authentication, there are no native solutions for Oracle Business Suite except for what we're going to present today. So kind of let's jump into the solution here. How do I get two-factor authentication in Oracle Business Suite without a lot of complexity? Our solution is AppDefend, and AppDefend is an enterprise security solution for Oracle Business Suite. First and foremost, it's an application firewall for Oracle Business Suite that's been designed and optimized for Oracle Business Suite. Why AppDefend is so unique is it was designed from the ground up for Oracle Business Suite and PeopleSoft. It only works for 2 applications. And this provides a lot of capability and a lot of power for the application because, again, we're preventing web attacks. We're providing virtual patching for all the critical patch updates. We're reducing the surface area of the application by limiting what web pages people can access. Oracle Business Suite is 20,000 web pages. If you're running iSupplier on the internet, you may need about 10 or 20 web pages. There's very few web pages that are actually used in some of the modules, as well as providing protection for mobile applications and web services. Within Oracle Business Suite, there's 2 mobile architectures. There's 11 different web services architectures. Even though only 1 or 2 are used, they're all still there. Oracle doesn't get rid of stuff in Oracle Business Suite once they stop using it. It's all still there. It may not be enabled, it may not be configured or installed, but a lot of the security vulnerabilities and issues in these components of Oracle Business Suite are still vulnerable even if you're not using it. And finally, what we're going to talk about mostly today is SSO and two-factor authentication, how AppDefend can implement that for Oracle Business Suite. And then the final feature of AppDefend is that we can provide very robust application logging for Oracle Business Suite. Where Oracle Business Suite does a lot of logging, but it goes to different tables. You've got FND logins, you've got the Oracle Business Suite audit trails, you've got the WebLogic logs, you've got the Apache logs. So there's lots of logging in the application, but it goes many different spots. Sometimes it's in files, sometimes it's in tables. So how do you actually get all that information into one place? AppDefend can do that very easily. We can send it upstream if you're using tools like Elasticsearch, Splunk, QRadar, LogRhythm. We natively send all the audit information from Oracle Business Suite immediately up to those tools using syslog, so it's near real time. And from when we talk about SSO and two-factor authentication, we're also sending all that authentication information, responsibility selections, pages, all that information we're sending up to those tools so you can actually get it into your security console, so you can actually monitor this. You can understand the IP address. Isn't it nice to have the capability to have IP address of who logged in? Because natively Oracle Business Suite doesn't support that until 12.2. AppDefend can capture that information easily and send it upstream to your security tools, your centralized logging solutions. So AppDefend provides a lot of security features around Oracle Business Suite, improving the security, and one of the most powerful is the single sign-on and two-factor authentication capabilities. AppDefend works for all versions of Oracle Business Suite at the firewall layer all the way back to 11i. For the single sign-on and multi-factor authentication, we support all versions of 12.0, 12.1, and 12.2, all the way up to 12.2.11. So even though you may not be supported today by Oracle, you may be on an older version, or you may actually have even dropped Oracle support, AppDefend can provide a single sign-on multi-factor authentication solution for you, even though your version is not supported by Oracle. We also, again, support all the operating systems supported by Oracle. We support all the Oracle architectures, shared appletops, internal, external servers. Any architecture you can come up with Oracle Business Suite, we've probably already seen, and we can support it. We've got some organizations that have 5 different application servers doing different things. We've got organizations using shared appletops for their external nodes, which is not recommended by Oracle, but we still fully support all those different architectures. So we can definitely work with you and make this work for sure. So why is AppDefend so unique, and why can it provide such capabilities for Oracle Business Suite? AppDefend is not an install outside of Oracle Business Suite. The way AppDefend works is you install it on each Oracle Business Suite application server, and it runs as part of the Java containers. And it sits within the application. So when you start up Oracle Business Suite, AppDefend starts up. When you stop it, AppDefend starts. There's no separate process. There's no separate hardware. There's nothing. It's distributed to all your application servers, running on each one, using a very standard Java specification called servlet filters, which Oracle uses quite a bit for different things, and a lot of other third parties do it. And the advantage here is AppDefend is in the application. It's actually part of Oracle Business Suite when it's running. So when AppDefend wants to know who's logged in, we just call the eBusiness Suite API and ask. So we can see all the session state information, all the attributes, all the internal error messages. We even query the database. We can pull up profile options and things like that. So if your user is getting too many SQL errors, that may not even be displayed to the user. AppDefend is seeing all those error messages and taking action based on different parameters, such as if it's a SQL injection attack, and because there's too many SQL errors happening behind the scenes. So AppDefend is in the perfect spot to do this, and that's why we can provide a native solution here. When AppDefend talks to the identity management system, we're talking natively from Oracle Business Suite to that. There's no additional hardware, there's no additional software in terms of Internet Directory Access Manager outside of the Oracle Business Suite environment. So this becomes very powerful. It's a direct connection and provides a lot of capabilities that other products can't do. So when we talk about single sign-on and multi-factor authentication, we step back and start talking about user populations. And most Oracle Business Suite environments have multiple user populations. And we mix and match single sign-on and or multi-factor authentication for those different user populations. This is now where the power comes in. This is where other products can't even match the features of AppDefend in terms of what we can do. So primarily, first and foremost, everyone thinks about internal users. So these are your employees, your on-site contractors, things like that. They're just logging in today normally in Oracle Business Suite. Excuse me. For those users, we can directly connect using a specific security specification called SAML to your on-premise Active Directory, Azure AD, Okta, Ping Identity, or whatever else you can come up with. So it's direct. So instead of logging into Oracle Business Suite, you see the Azure AD login page and you log in. I'll give you detailed demonstrations of this in a few minutes. And on top of that, we can now add in multi-factor authentication in addition to that, or if you don't want single sign-on and just multi-factor authentication, we can also do multi-factor authentication. So the multi-factor authentication can either pop up when you log in through, let's say, Azure AD, then you get a two-factor authentication, or we can then provide a separate one using things like Duo, RSA tokens, Radius, smartcards, things like that. So it becomes very powerful. The second user population you probably have is these generic users. You have to use sysadmin. You can't disable sysadmin. It has to be used. How are you protecting that? How do you know who's got that password? What controls do you have around that? Can you guarantee that those controls are in place? AppDefend has a very robust solution to protect the generic users. And we have clients have 30, 40 generic users in their environment doing different things. And I'll give you a very detailed client scenario here in a second. But we can provide either popping up a SSO authentication or doing it through Duo and other multi-factor authentication. I'll give you a couple examples here in a few minutes. But we can provide very robust protection to take a generic account like sysadmin, those concurrent manager batch job accounts that you are scheduling all your concurrent manager jobs under. How do you protect those? we can now take those and force a named user authentication to those accounts. So you log in as sysadmin, but you're forced to do either two-factor authentication to a named user, or actually you have to log in as a named user, and then we're authorizing that account to certain named users. This becomes very powerful. Then you've got some additional accounts like external users, your suppliers. You don't want to put your suppliers in your Active Directory. Most people don't want to do that. There are some cases where we actually do that and we work fine with that scenario also. But you have to add some two-factor authentication, and you want to add additional security in that. So we still keep all your suppliers in FND user because that typically makes sense. But if you don't want to do that, we can actually fully support that also. But you add in a two-factor authentication. Something like TOTP, that's where you basically have the 6-digit code. You've got the Authenticator app on your phone. It could be Microsoft Authenticator, Google Authenticator. And we walk the user through that registration process. We walk them through typing that code in. If they lose their phone, we have got mechanisms around all that. We can also do SMS, email, and we're working also on logging in via Google or Microsoft. So some websites you pop up and it says, hey, you want to use your Google credentials to actually log in. We can do all that within AppDefend. In some cases, you may not want a two-factor authentication. And then in some cases, you may have like external users in terms of candidates for iRecruitment, customers via iStore. You may not want a two-factor authentication on that. You may want it just on your suppliers, or you may want a solution on those. So the beauty of AppDefend is that you can actually mix and match for all your different user populations, where they're coming from, time of day. We can pop up a lot of this based on what you want to do and mix and match it to different user populations. You may just have internal users, that works great, but you may have 6 or 7 different sets of user populations that you want to do different single sign-on and or multi-factor authentication for. So think of this as a giant menu, and you're picking, each person at the table is picking what they want off that menu to optimize it for that user population. So for suppliers, it makes perfect sense to keep them in FND user. That's your record of truth for your suppliers, but give them that Google Authenticator app so we know that that's the only user coming in. So let's kind of jump into the single sign-on. So AppDefend is a native solution for single sign-on. We support SAML 2.0 and acts as what's within the SAML specification. It's called the service provider. The other side is the identity provider. And so an example of identity provider would be Active Directory on-premise, Azure AD, Okta, AWS Identity Center. There's a lots of them out there. And there's a few standards out there in the world that actually work as a standard. And as long as you implement the standard, we can work with it. SAML is one of those. SAML 2.0 is rock solid, is very secure. And if someone implements SAML 2.0, we can work with it, no problem. We have not run into an issue at all with any support of any identity provider. We work with I think it's about 9 so far of different identity providers out there. And so again, there's no additional hardware here. There's no additional identity management software to buy. We're just natively integrating with your identity provider. And the vast majority of our clients are Active Directory on-premise, Azure AD and Okta, and then we've got a smattering, probably 5% of other different providers out there. And the advantage that AppDefend has is that we are the most secure SSO implementation for Oracle Business Suite by far, because all the other implementations need to reduce security slightly in order to allow their solution to work. We don't have to do that because we are a native solution. And kind of the technical version of this is that there's the EBS session cookie, and you scope session cookies to either a host or a domain. Host is most secure. Domain means that anybody else on that same domain can actually intercept the cookie and then hijack your Oracle Business Suite session. If it's set to host, that's the most secure. AppDefend allows you to keep it at host. If you look at any of the Oracle solutions, they require you to set the cookie session scope to domain, which potentially allows any other application in your environment to hijack the session cookie for Oracle Business Suite. So if you have a rogue application out there and you can kind of force the user to go to that, they can easily hijack the session cookie if the person's currently logged in within the browser session. So the way this works is we don't change the URL at all. This is very transparent. So what happens is The user still goes to their exact same URL that they've been going to, so there's no change in your environment there. And what AppDefend is now intercepts that authentication startup process, and we redirect you to the identity provider. You log in through the identity provider, and I'll give you a detailed demo here in a second. And then the identity provider says, we trust this person, here's the username, and we will then log that person into Oracle Business Suite through AppDefend. So the user is just using the exact same URL, and they're basically just seeing the exact same identity provider login page that they're used to. So if you're using Azure AD, Okta, on-premise AD, for a lot of your other applications, it's the login page they're used to. And if they're logged in already, they go right into Oracle Business Suite, because if they're already in the browser, they may have gone to another application, they're already logged in, and the identity provider will tell us, hey, there's no need for a login. Here's the credentials. The person has been authorized, and they can go right into Oracle Business Suite. So again, we're dramatically improving the user satisfaction. There's not an additional login page. I don't have to remember a different username. I don't have to remember a different password. And the presentation will be available. There's some additional slides there that walk through this in gory detail if anyone wants to jump into exactly how SAML works behind the scenes. But the key here is there's a lot of security checks, a lot of validations within SAML. SAML is a very rigid protocol in terms of how things have to be encrypted, how things have to be signed, and AppDefend supports all the advanced features of SAML, as well as additional features related to Oracle Business Suite that make it the most secure SSO MFA implementation for Oracle Business Suite. We're providing additional capabilities around, because we know how Oracle Business Suite works. It's a Java application running the OA framework, and we take advantage of that, and we can actually add additional checks within the SAML authentication process to make sure that something nefarious is not happening. One of the complaints we often get from our clients is that, hey, our Active Directory accounts are completely named differently than our Oracle Business Suite. We've had dozens of mergers. It's just a complete mess between what's in Active Directory, what's in Oracle Business Suite. So AppDefend has an incredibly powerful mapping solution to take what's in your identity provider, and this could be multiple identity providers, and then map that to a user in Oracle Business Suite. So the directory of truth is still within Oracle Business Suite. So you still set up the users in Oracle Business Suite. They're still an FND user, but they can't log in directly. What happens is we're taking that process and forcing the login through the identity provider back into Oracle Business Suite. So we can then map what's being passed from the identity provider, let's say Active Directory, to Oracle Business Suite, and we can either match it to username, the email address on FND user, the employee ID and PRL people F, or even a custom database query. And we can also even do, if it's really a mess, we can do expression mapping by, let's say your usernames in Active Directory are first dot last name, but in Oracle Business Suite it's first name, the first two characters, your first name and your last name. We can basically take that and actually transform, even if it's really difficult, from an Active Directory name and transform it into an Oracle Business Suite name. And we can take it to a step farther that we can actually have multiple of these rules evaluated per login. So if the first rule doesn't match, we can then go to a second rule, a third rule, and it's actually limited to 8 rules. We've never hit that many, but we can actually then go through a number of different rules, because if it doesn't match email address, we can then maybe check employee ID based on what's getting passed from different attributes from the identity provider. So this becomes very powerful. So even if you have a mess and you say, oh no, we tried this before, it completely failed, we can do this matching better than anyone else can in terms of making it work at the end of the day. And we have one client actually who has a custom database table. They have such a mess that they actually create a custom database table, and they pull the information from the different identity providers that they're using and actually have a table that does the mapping, and then we just query against that table to actually make the match. So that's the worst case scenario, but that's even a possibility here in terms of what AppDefend can do. So that's the SSO solution. And on top of that, we can either layer multi-factor authentication, or multi-factor authentication can be completely separate. And we can support duo security, RSA tokens, radius, TOTP, SMS, which is text messages, email, and even smart cards. And so what's happening is when you log into Oracle Business Suite, we're then popping up a page, which is then asking for our two-factor authentication. And where this is really powerful is we do this not only at the login, we can do this at specific pages, responsibilities, functions, and things like that. So that's where it becomes very powerful. We're contextual. We can do this down within the application. Because most two-factor authentications, you do this at the login only. You can't get into the application. AppDefend can get into the application, and so we can get down to anything you want in the application. So if you get to that bank account page and you want to have a two-factor authentication on that, just to verify that the user is actually that user, is not a phishing attack or something like that, we can do that. We can also do this contextually aware. So if someone's logging at 2 a.m., not during normal business hours, we can pop up a two-factor authentication. If you're coming from a remote location, then through the VPN versus on-site, we can pop it up. If you're coming from a different device, those types of things. And we can tailor this also. We can pop up one two-factor authentication per application session. We can do it each time. So there's a lot of capability. And the beautiful thing about this is we're then logging and auditing all these authentications and sending this up to your security council so they have additional information. And this is all implemented within Oracle Business Suite. So there's no additional hardware. There's no single point of failure. You don't have to maintain a whole nother identity management system. We're doing it directly through, for two-factor authentication, things like Duo, RSA, directly. And so for the use cases, we do it oftentimes for the entire application. So just when you log in, you get your two-factor authentication. We have certain clients who say, hey, if you're accessing system administrator, we need to protect that. So whenever you access a function as part of a certain responsibility, we will pop up a two-factor authentication. Sometimes for privileged users, we have full control over privileged users, and I'll show you some examples here in a minute. Or high-risk functions. Again, the one that is typically implemented here is around bank accounts, either supplier bank accounts or employee bank accounts as part of self-service. Because again, that's where the phishing attacks, that's where the fraud occurs, that I'm trying to get into Oracle Business Suite in order to change the bank account number, to steal a vendor payment, to steal an employee direct deposit, and things like that. That's where this becomes very powerful, is that I can now tailor this down to your specific requirements and environment to say, hey, yeah, this is the high risk point within Oracle Business Suite. So for the multi-factor authentication, we can put this on different points within the application, or we can do it just at the login, where if you're using the SSO and the two-factor authentication through your SSO, that's only at login. If you're using things like Oracle Internet Directory, Oracle Access Manager, they're limited to doing this just at the login, where AppDefend can now take it down within the application, down to certain privileged activities, certain high-risk activities, those types of things. One of our newer features within AppDefend is to do this for generic account protection. Things like sysadmin, those generic accounts used to schedule concurrent manager programs. We have a number of ways we can protect those types of accounts, and we can use different options for different accounts based on your requirements. This becomes very powerful. This is a compliance challenge everyone has, and if your auditors haven't picked up that, oh, by the way, all your DBAs are logging in as sysadmin and they can do whatever they want in the application, your auditors are missing a major compliance point. We've had a lot of clients buy AppDefend just for this capability because they have such a compliance challenge around it. There is no other way to solve it. And so what we can do is when you log into these generic accounts, we have 4 different options of what to do on how you want to handle it. So the first 3 options are, I log in and I need to know for that generic account the username and password. Once I log in though, I can't go any farther because then AppDefend is going to pop up a two-factor authentication. And that two-factor authentication can basically be one of 3 things. One is I then, if you're using SSO also, AppDefend will redirect you to your SSO to have you log in through that using a named user. And then AppDefend is maintaining a list of who's authorized to use that account. So within AppDefend, or by setting profile options within Oracle Business Suite, I can authorize different people to use different accounts. And again, we can set this up for a lot of different scenarios. And some of our customers actually have three out of 4 of these working simultaneously. And then if you're in an authorized user, you're allowed to use that account. Otherwise, we block your access to that account. Even though you know the username and password, we then have that secondary authentication saying, hey, you have to be authorized through a named user to use this account, and that's either a profile option or a group within AppDefend. If you're using SSO as option 1, if you're not using SSO, option 2, we're then forcing another login through Oracle Business Suite to say, again, use a named user, and that named user has to be authorized to use that generic account. We can also do this through the MFA solution. So Duo Security is a prime example. So what you do in Duo Security is you actually set this up and create the sysadmin account in Duo Security, which is a two-factor authentication solution from Cisco, which is very powerful. And then you assign individuals' devices to that. So different people, if you have 5 DBAs who have to use sysadmin, you would take their 5 phones and assign that not only to their personal account, but to the sysadmin account. And then when they log in, they actually get a two-factor authentication. I'll show you an example of this in a few minutes, that they then have to type in the 6-digit code from their phone. And you can assign multiple people. And then the beauty of this is we're logging this all behind the scenes. So all this information is being logged, and so we know that someone logged into sysadmin at this time and it was this named user. Therefore, compliance challenge solved. And then the final solution is actually doing this through your identity provider, and we'll show you some examples where if you log into, if you're frequently using things like Azure AD or Okta, you're used to application tiles. So you kind of log into Azure AD, you get a whole page of different application tiles, you click them and go to different applications. We can do it so an application tile maps to a generic account. That application tile is only assigned to certain users, so only those users are allowed to access it. And this way, the user doesn't even have access to the password of the account. They don't even know for like sysadmin what the password to sysadmin is. And then we block local login to sysadmin, and therefore this is the only way to get into that account. So these become very meaningful ways to solve that compliance challenge around the generic accounts. Here's an example of this in real life. So this was one client that had, I think it was around 30 generic accounts, but they had a lot of different requirements. They had generic accounts mapping to many named users. Some cases where they had many generic accounts, one user had many generic accounts, and other cases where they had many generic accounts were accessed by many different users. And again, we're logging all this. We're logging the named user from when they access the the generic account to mapping to that named user. So in this case, they had sysadmin. There was a tile within their Azure AD that forced them to use sysadmin only through that tile. It was tightly controlled. It was limited to just the DBAs. And the sysadmin password was not known by the DBAs. They also had a number of job scheduling accounts, and the job scheduling accounts were actually accessible by all the DBAs in the operations team. So we put in one rule for AppDefend that listed all 10 job scheduling accounts, and then the DBAs, because the DBAs were a very static list, they were put in a AppDefend group. But then for the operations team, because that team changed over time and there was a little bit of changes, and the DBAs could then go in and set the profile option if that person was allowed to access any of the scheduling accounts. Then they were doing a lot of maintenance and setup during maintenance windows. So they didn't want to ever assign out any privileged responsibility to anyone, was kind of the goal of the organization, as that's how they controlled it. But then they set up these generic accounts that had those privileged responsibilities, and the DBAs would have to go in and turn the passwords on and off and try to push those passwords out to different people at different times. So the way it was changed was they actually set up just one AppDefend rule for those 12 accounts. And we also have a very powerful feature within AppDefend. It's called maintenance mode feature. And that allows you to turn on maintenance mode, which basically locks everyone else out unless you're authorized to use the application during maintenance. It's very similar to the standard Oracle maintenance mode, but this becomes more powerful because it's kind of that time between you finish patching, but you want to open it up to a limited set of users, but not everybody. Maintenance mode allows you to do that. So these accounts were only actually allowed if the maintenance mode is enabled, and then they were controlled by different profile options. And they actually had different scripts that automated this very quickly to set it for certain users and turn it off for certain users when they did it based on what testing they were doing. And then finally, they had a number of testing accounts that, again, before you turn it over to users, people need to go in there and quickly do some testing. And for their testing, they had some privileged responsibilities, which again, they didn't want to sign out to the users full time. And so what they did was had these generic test accounts, and these were then set up and based off of who was testing at what point. We then added an additional AppDefend rule that if anyone ever accessed any of these testing accounts, we captured all the activity for that. So again, we're working with not only SSO and MFA, but some of the core capabilities of AppDefend to add in additional compliance and security around these different accounts. So this was kind of a scenario, and this is how powerful we can actually handle this generic account issue, because again, if your internal auditors knew all the generic accounts most people have, they would actually be not very happy. So what I'll do now is jump into some scenarios here. And so I'll bring up and kind of show you. Some of this goes pretty quickly, so you have to kind of watch what's happening, but here's an example that we have of, this is kind of a 12.2.9 Oracle Business Suite environment, and scenarios, very common scenarios that we run into with our clients. So the standard login, so again, here's the URL here, very standard URL for Oracle Business Suite. The URL doesn't change, so when we implement single sign-on, there is no change. The users go to the same place they go to. And so when I click the login here, I still get that standard Oracle Business Suite page, but now instead of going to the standard Oracle Business Suite page, I've actually been redirected to Azure AD. I need to log in to Azure AD here. And in this case, it's actually, I've got two-factor authentication set up through Azure AD. And so that's an example of where it's not being handled by AppDefend, but it's actually being handled by my identity provider. Then we'll click no here. And I go right into Oracle Business Suite. So now it's logged me in. As you can see, my name when I logged in, actually in this case matched. It was kind of very simple, very simplistic. Now when I hit the log out, I'll actually go back to the Azure AD My Apps page. So again, this is all the applications I have access through our Microsoft accounts. And as you can see, I have a tile here for Oracle Business Suite. Now if I just click that tile again, I go right into Oracle Business Suite. No login page. That's the beauty of single sign-on. So I've now eliminated additional password, additional even username. And in this case, even if those passwords and that username doesn't match, we can map that with an AppDefend. Again, I click here and I go back to Azure AD. So that's one example. And in this case, actually, I have this set up. We have this set up where actually multiple simultaneously, we have 4 different identity providers set up. So in the same, this is the exact same environment. I'm not going to switch environments here at all. I'm going to one single Oracle Business Suite environment. But let's say we've got Okta. Okta is another very popular identity management system. And here I'm clicking, I'm actually going to go in as a user. And so in this case, I've got multiple identity management systems all running simultaneously with one Oracle Business Suite environment. And again, I've logged in, I've gone in. In this case, we'll pop back to Azure AD, just to give you an example. So that's an example for internal users, how they would access and how the SSO works. So very similar to the way Oracle Access Manager works, but instead of getting a completely separate login page that they're not used to of Access Manager, we're just using the native, what they're used to, because they're logging into this every day. We'll jump down to another example here. Now for suppliers, let's go in as a supplier here. So again, the same URL that they're used to. And in this case, I'm going to use FND user. I don't want them to go through SSO. I don't want to set my suppliers up in Active Directory. That just doesn't make sense. So in this case, I'm going to actually just still go in and use what's there for F&D user, but I want to add in an additional layer of protection. I want to add in two-factor authentication. And in this case, I logged in, and now it's going to require me to actually go through this. And this page is fully customizable. You can do anything you want in this page. This is just the demo page we give you. But again, you can recommend, you can have links to going out to what preferred solution you want. If they already have something on their phone, they can use that. And in this case, I'm just now going to go on my phone. I'll bring up Google Authenticator. Fortunately, I can't really show it to you, but on my phone, I'm just now going in. I'm scanning this QR code on my phone, and this is what the users would do. And then for the first time, we force them to make sure that everything worked right. They actually type in the code for the first time, and they register, and they go into Oracle Business Suite. And what I'll do here is log out, and now I'll log in again, and you'll see kind of after they've done it the first time, then they just get prompted for the authentication code to type in from their phone. And you can put links here to say, if you lost your phone, what should you do? Most of our clients will then have, please reach out to the supplier support, the buyers, and then the buyers will have a self-service an OA framework customization that they can push a button and will actually reset their two-factor authentication. So kind of a complete workflow here. And again, I'm into the application. So that's an example of a supplier. So again, you can do different things for different users going on. Let's pop up an example here of duo authentication. So this is one way that we can protect the sysadmin user. So here I log in as sysadmin, and I will now get a duo authentication. So duo security is a two-factor authentication solution by Cisco, and I can now send a push to the phone, or I can type in a passcode. I'll just do a push because it's kind of nice, a little bit easier for me. But now I could assign this out because I logged in as sysadmin. I have now in Duo Security assigned sysadmin out to multiple users. I've assigned their devices, so then they would just type in the code from their phone in order to log into sysadmin. Now I've protected sysadmin to only a few users, and I've got a full audit trail in Duo. And I'm not going to push anything here. I'm just doing it on my phone. And again, now I'm into sysadmin. So it becomes very powerful on the capabilities of what I can do. And I'll log out here. So we'll kind of keep with the two-factor authentication theme. And so now actually just log in as another account. We'll log in as operations because that has a whole bunch of things set up for it. And now I'll actually go in to, we'll go to employee self-service. And now I'm in the application. And let's say I want to manage my payroll payments here. So this is where actually this function here is where I actually set up direct deposit. And I can now, whenever I try to access any of the functions under that menu item to try to change my bank account, my direct deposit bank account, again, it's now requiring me to do a two-factor authentication. And again, I'm going on my phone and I'm actually approving it. And the user doesn't have to do anything at that point, and then I'm in. And the nice thing here is now I'll go home, but once they've done it one time, we don't require them, and we can require them if you want, but the next time they go in the same login, they don't get it again. So if I log out and I try to go back in, I would get it. In this case, this user also has system administrator. We're now also putting a two-factor authentication just on any function in system administrator. So anything they want to go to in system administrator, I'll just go to applications manager. Again, this is another two-factor authentication. So when they try to do any certain function in certain responsibilities, again, I'm just now popping up another two-factor authentication. So I'm now guaranteeing that it's that person hasn't phished that user or done something malicious around that. So that's an example of kind of capabilities about putting two-factor authentication in different points, popping it up for different reasons. We'll now go in for another example here. And again, you've got these batch accounts. I've got GL, job, and we'll call it FND in this case. And I know the password to this account. So this is one of those generic job scheduling. So all of my general ledger jobs are scheduled under one generic account. 5 people have access to it. There's posting stuff in here. So your auditor should be just throwing a conniption that you're just sharing this password amongst users. But what we've done is now in AppDefend, we put a second layer of protection here. So now what happens is I now have to log in as an Oracle Business Suite named user that's authorized to use this account. And it could be authorized via profile option or a group within AppDefend. And let's try to log in as operations. And this user is not authorized to use it. So and I can't use this account unless I'm authorized to use it. And now I went in as another account and it was authorized. So that's one option. If I'm using single sign-on, here's another example. And now I'll actually log in as this account. So now instead of doing through FND user, I'm actually going to use my identity management platform. And so just a warning message. And again, all those pages are, and since I'm actually logged in already as Okta, it allowed me right in. So very powerful, very capable to protect those generic accounts. So we went through a number of scenarios here to show you kind of the single sign-on working, how we can protect and add two-factor authentication to privileged accounts, privileged responsibilities, or very high-risk functions. We went through a number of scenarios around protecting generic accounts. So again, this is mix and match. This is going through in your environment and looking at your different user populations and how do you want to protect each one. Looking through these different user populations with the different solutions for single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, and popping it up at different points and different solutions. And for like the generic users, we have clients with 2 or 3 different ways that they do it, just based on, hey, is it one user accessing one account or is it 10 users accessing 10 different accounts? And we can pick and choose what's the best solution for you in order to do this. So we'll open up to questions. I'll turn it back to Phil.
Thank you, Steve. Couldn't find the off move button. Very interesting session, Steve. Very interesting. I got a couple of questions here. One of them is AppDefend. If you have AppDefend, would you still need something like for the web to protect your iSpires portal?
So any of the web application firewalls out there don't have anything really related to Oracle Business Suite. They might have a few rules here and there, but they're very limited. So if you already have a web application firewall in front of Oracle Business Suite, we recommend you keep that, but AppDefend will provide the second layer of protection that's very in-depth, very specific to Oracle Business Suite. So we virtually patch each critical patch vulnerability. So one is going around right now in Web ADI that's very severe. Exploit code has been published out. We fixed that in October. You were already protected, and without even updating any, you updated your October 2022 critical patch update rules, you were protected from that vulnerability within Oracle Business Suite. Where FortiWeb, yeah, who knows if they actually have implemented a rule for that or not. So they're looking to protect generic levels of applications, and there's an Imperva WAF. All the WAFs are very similar to, they're protecting, and the reason we prefer actually customers actually implemented a general WAF like that is because it just cuts down on drive-by attacks, on that kind of just someone spraying all your websites with attacks, where AppDefend is protecting very specific security vulnerabilities, including general classes of security vulnerabilities like SQL injection, cross-site scripting, as well as misconfigurations. So we have rules around like the OP sysadmin account. Hopefully you've changed the password for OP sysadmin and undated it like the secure configuration guide recommends, and we actually wrote that document for Oracle. But we actually have very specific rules that allow you to block access to that account. And the reason we have a rule, even though you may have changed the password, is you need to know if someone's actually coming at your Oracle Business Suite with specific Oracle Business Suite attacks. And so that's why AppDefend is so powerful. It's not only doing known vulnerabilities, classes of vulnerabilities, protecting all the different web architectures of Oracle Business Suite, it also has misconfiguration rules and things like that. It's so specific to Oracle Business Suite. So there's nothing on the market like it. There's nothing that can protect Oracle Business Suite like AppDefend in terms of a WAF. And the WAFs will provide a little bit of protection, but we do our security assessments, and we actually attack a lot of websites every single day. We've never not been able to get immediately around a WAF in 10 seconds. It's like, yeah, you've got, like, it actually blocks. We're actually surprised when the WAF blocks something that we're testing. Is probably the best way to put it.
Next question. We have an in-house developed identity management platform. Will it work with AppDefend?
Yes, because as long as it can support SAML 2.0, and we actually have several customers that have similar situations that have in-house developed or open source or something like that identity management platforms, and we work absolutely no problem with them. I'm amazed on how well SAML 2.0 works as a specification, and we've never had a problem with any identity management platform, even custom developed ones.
Nice. Next question. Our users are in 4 different AD domains and different networks. Can AppDefend handle this?
Absolutely. So we can fully support different identity management systems, multiple different AD domains, and we can do it several different ways that, depending on where you come in from, we can put up a landing page saying, hey, please select from one of these domains, things like that. So we can solve that challenge because a lot of people struggle with that, and AppDefend can easily solve that, and is an incredible solution for that.
Next question. How does the licensing work for AppDefend?
Yeah, so AppDefend is 2 parts. It's the web application firewall as well as the SSO and MFA. So we license per production server, and you get all test and development for free for the web application firewall, and that's required for all the application servers that AppDefend is going to be running on. And then on top of that, we layer multi-factor authentication and SSO with additional licensing based on ranges of users. We don't get into, oh, you got one more user, we're going to charge you $1. There's broad ranges of users, numbers of users, and it's very cost effective against other solutions.
Another question on price. If we already own AppDefend and use strictly as a WAF, are there additional licensing costs to implement MFA and SSO?
Yes, there's some additional licensing costs, but what's amazing about implementing AppDefend, if you already have it installed as the WAF, and then implementing SSO and MFA, we don't even have to restart OA core. We add in a couple simple rules, it's dynamic, and we can immediately turn it on. So it's very quick and easy to actually implement this if you already actually have the AppDefend WAF. We've done that with a number of customers, and it's very quick and easy to do. And as part of the implementation also, we can stage this very well and turn on segments of users, parts of users. So we've gone through a lot of different scenarios with our clients. Either they just turn on all at once, or we can actually stage it and actually have it just for a few users. We can do a small group of users to test this out in the production environment. So this can be a change to users and kind of, oh, you need to communicate it well, at least let them know what's going to be happening. But we can roll this out very slowly or do a big bang type implementation. So we have a lot of different capabilities to do this, and the upgrading is very simple. We've also had a lot of clients going from 12.1.3 to 12.2 recently. There is no change in our configuration. We actually have to just do one slight reinstall because we went from Oracle Application Server to WebLogic, but you just rerun the install process, and that keeps all your customizations. All your current configuration stays the same. There's not even a single change to our configuration files. The only thing we have to do is just move our filter definition for WebLogic. So it's very simple to even do an upgrade. And for Oracle patching, we have no dependencies on that at all. So we've had a number of clients go from 12.1.3 to 12.2, 12.2.5 to 12.2.11, and there is no impact to AppDefend at all.
Well, thank you, Steve. I think that about wraps it up for the day. I want to thank everybody for taking time this Thursday afternoon to participate with us. So have a great rest of the week. Take care.